I'm Stella Vosniadou. I'm one of the people that are involved in this project. We have visitors here from Melbourne, Lorraine who is going to talk about the project also, and from ASMS, Jayne Heath and Caroline Green from Reynella East. So thank you all for coming here, and we are going to start. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and that I respect their spiritual relationship with their country. Also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the traditional custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. Okay, so the Learning How to Learn project, promoting self-regulated learning in STEM classes, is a project that investigates key factors that influence improvements in teacher capacity and student academic performance in STEM classes. So the questions, some of the general questions that we're trying to answer: how can we create sustainable changes in teacher practices in STEM? And do these changes influence student interest, uptake of science and science learning? The project is funded by an ARC Discovery Project grant, and it is a collaboration between Flinders University, the University of Melbourne, the Goethe University Frankfurt, and Arizona State University in the US. By the way, please interrupt me anytime you would like to have a question. It's not a formal talk. I hope there'll be plenty of time for discussion afterwards. We would very much like to hear your comments, but at any time, please interrupt me. Okay, so what are the teacher practices that promote the development of student cognitive engagement and agency? Little success so far has been achieved in answering this question, and the project aims to design and evaluate innovative professional learning programs that help teachers create learning environments that promote student cognitive engagement. So we have some ideas. We would like you to participate and evaluate whether we can in fact create such environments. Okay, the project has 3 phases. There is a video observation study, and some of you may have participated in the video observation study because we're already working with some schools in the area. The professional learning program for pre-service teachers and a professional learning program for practicing teachers. So we will focus on the last one, but before we do that, I would just say a few words about the other phases of the project so that you have an idea of what the whole project is about. So the video observation study is a collaboration between Flinders University, University of Melbourne, and University of Frankfurt. And what we're doing there is we are videotaping teachers while they're teaching, and we're collecting these videotapes. And the reason why we're doing that is in order to validate surveys that we have created between the University of Melbourne, Flinders University, and the University of Frankfurt that are based on teachers' self-reports about their teaching. So one question about self-reports is how well do the self-reports reflect what is actually the teachers are doing in the classroom. What is the relationship between what the teachers say and what the teachers do? So asking the teachers to complete the questionnaires, the surveys, and also videotape them allow us to validate the self-reports and also see if the two are not together, if there is incompatibility or discrepancies between what the teachers say and what the teachers do, and what are some of the reasons. Is it because the surveys are not good? Is it because the teachers are not very well aware of what they're doing in the classroom? And there is some research that shows that awareness of your practices and also of students, when students are more aware of the strategies they use for their learning, this aspect of metacognition is very significantly related to effectiveness of instruction. So that's the question that we have. And also we're interested in cross-cultural differences in teacher practices. There is a lot of emphasis on self-regulated learning and student agency in Europe, in the north of Europe, in Germany, in the Netherlands, in Scandinavia. And we are working with these people to see and compare what is happening in Australia with what is happening in the north of Europe. Okay. The professional learning program for pre-service teachers, we have put together a number of whole-day professional development workshops to be delivered to third and fourth year pre-service teachers in South Australia and in Victoria in the next 2 years. And they're designed to provide information to pre-service teachers about teaching practices that promote student cognitive engagement and student agency. And the workshops are video-based. The participants watch the videos of unknown teachers as a tool to foster reflection on their teaching. Okay? Any questions? Jayne, do you have a question?
Sure. No, I don't.
Okay.
Me off guard then, sorry.
Okay, so this is what we are here to discuss today, the professional learning program for practicing teachers. The purpose is to co-design teachers and researchers together, the teachers that are participating, learning environments that promote student cognitive engagement and STEM, and self-regulation in STEM. So what we'll be using is a participatory approach that sets up a long-term partnership with teachers, enabling them to reflect upon their practices, assumptions, and beliefs. And what we would like the participating teachers to do is to set up their own inquiry project related to the theme of promoting student engagement and agency. And throughout the course of the year, we will help them reflect on that inquiry project and develop it further, and at the end to evaluate what they have done. So the main elements of the project is that we would like it to be school-based rather than teacher-based, to be implemented with the support of the school leadership. We would like to have 3 or 4 teachers from the same school so that they can collaborate and support each other. There will be online materials. We have a website, and there are already materials that are there, and also some face-to-face sessions during the year. And again, it will be video-based, so there will be discussion of classroom videos of unknown teachers. We have created a small video bank of from science, mathematics, STEM classes, not only from Australia but from other countries, and they will be used as a tool to foster reflection on teaching. And if the students are comfortable with their own videos and the changes that they make in their teaching, we can also see their videos, but they won't have to do it if they don't want to do it. Okay, so the project is guided by 2 theoretical frameworks. One of them is called ICAP, and ICAP stands for Interactive, Constructive, Active, and Passive Learning. And the other is the framework around self-regulated learning. Now, the ICAP theory is a theory about student cognitive engagement that was developed by Miki Chi, who is a collaborator in the project. She's also a project investigator, and she's from the State University of Arizona. She's a well-known cognitive scientist and educator. Okay, so what this framework says is that the students can engage with instructional materials in different ways: passive, active, constructive, interactive, and constructive. And of course, teachers can, through their talk and their actions in the classroom, can channel students to engage with instructional materials in different ways. And the theory also claims, and there is a lot of empirical support for this claim, that active engagement leads to better learning outcomes than passive engagement, and constructive is better than active, and interactive constructive engagement leads to the best learning outcomes. So ICA provides a powerful theoretical framework that can guide teachers to design learning environments that promote student learning. And through the watching of videos, we can score videos and use the ICAP theory as a lens for looking at instruction and looking and examining teacher action and teacher talk in order to see how you can promote constructive and interactive learning. So the emphasis of the project is to make people understand what are the tasks and strategies that promote interactive and constructive cognitive engagement in STEM areas. For example, some examples you can see there: drawing concept maps, using visualizations, model building, asking questions, posing problems, comparing and contrasting cases, using refutational text, generating hypotheses, predicting outcomes, metaphors, instructional analogies. Some of the tasks that teachers can use. So we will explain some of these tasks and strategies. And we will focus on science and mathematics learning, because in science and mathematics, understanding new information often requires revisions of prior knowledge, and these revisions of prior knowledge requires that students engage in processes that such as comparing information, understanding similarities and differences, building models, making revisions of these models, and in other words, engage in inferential processes that make it possible to generate new knowledge. Okay, so here you see an example. For example, research shows that from first grade to sixth grade, students have a model of the world, such as the one that you see over there, where the sun goes behind the mountains, the moon comes up, and they have, at the end of elementary schooling, they have a model like that, most of them, not all of them. So you can see that the representation is very different, and it takes a long time, and you create a lot of inferential processes in order to understand how this abstract model actually fits to reality. And a lot of science is like that. You have to understand a lot of counterintuitive concepts. So we'll be doing some of that. Now, the self-regulation of learning is another conceptual framework for understanding the cognitive, motivational, and emotional aspects of learning. There are different theories, but they all agree that learning can be improved, and learning is more effective when students understand themselves as learners and employ cognitive and metacognitive strategies to manage and control their learning. And how can you promote SRL in the classroom? You can promote students' knowledge about learning, knowledge about how learning happens, and about how motivations, emotions, and beliefs influence learning, and of course about the self as a learner. And you can promote students' use of learning strategies. The strategies the students can use to plan, monitor, and evaluate their learning and control their beliefs, motivations, and emotions. And another thing that is important is teachers' beliefs about learning and teaching, and the effect of these beliefs on their practices. Okay, so what the research interest is. So what we would like the participant teachers to do is do their own inquiry project. We will be providing information about the areas that I mentioned, but you can pick and select the kind of information that you want, that you think is relevant to your teaching, and create an inquiry project that is relevant for you, and we can provide support and help you reflect on that and develop the project and evaluate it. Now, as a research project, from a research point of view, we are more broadly interested in some of the factors related to teacher change and student learning. That's why we are asking the teachers to complete surveys, to make a video of their classroom practices at the beginning and the end of the project, so we can document changes in teachers' knowledge, belief, and practices. And also, there is a possibility, if you're interested, to do similar things with students. You don't have to do this year of the first year of the project, of this project, is really about teacher change. But we have another year, and if you think you're interested in the project, you can continue for a second year and also look not only at teacher change and how teachers change their practices and reflect upon your own practices, but understand how changes in practices may have an influence on student learning. So this can be done from the beginning, but there will be a greater focus on student academic outcomes during the third year of the project, which is in 2021. Okay, I think this summarizes what I have to say. If you're interested in getting involved, please complete the sign-in sheet that is available tonight, and we will be in contact with you very soon, because we would like, as much as possible, to have an understanding of the schools that are interested in participating in the project before the end of the term, so that we can start planning for next year, because as you all know, when the new year starts, everybody's very busy. There is not a lot of time for planning at that stage. Okay, I've done my bit. We'll have time for questions. If you have some pressing questions, you can ask now, or we'll go to the next speaker.
With the year level range you're interested in?
Year level, I understand you come from a primary school. This is more designed for middle school, but I think that a lot of what we're going to be doing are things that you can do at primary school. So if you're interested, okay?
I'd like to talk about the collaboration that's at the heart of this project. It's a collaboration between universities in different countries, researchers in different institutions, and then the most important collaboration is actually with us and with you and with your students. Yeah, I was just saying about what's really key is the collaboration, and what's really key is the co-creation and the opportunity to really look at some key educational issues, particularly in this area of STEM, where students, to be really successful, they have to be able to do some of those skills that Stella enumerated, but that really to be able to pose hypotheses, to be aware of ways to formulate the question that they're really having to engage with, and ways that they can marshal all of their own knowledge about how they learn and what learning strategies are available in order to do better in all of their subjects. I did want to talk about the collaboration between the University of Melbourne and Flinders in particular here in Australia. We're going to be a little bit like the weather. After the studies are in place here in South Australia, we'll then start to do them in Victoria. It's kind of like how your terrible Wednesday turned into our awful Thursday, so that Sean and I could come to you on Thursday afternoon and have some relief from that very worrying weather. I'd also like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Sean Kang. Sean is a cognitive psychologist, and he's joined the Melbourne Graduate School of Education in July this year to run the Science of Learning Research Centre. And he has a number of colleagues that he's working with there, and he's looking at how productively we can also work together on elements of this discovery grant together with Stella. I should say a little word or two about Stella as well. Professor Vosniadou is an actual legend in the area of conceptual change, in the area of working as a cognitive psychologist again, about deeply understanding basic issues to do with how we learn and how we change our minds over time, particularly when things don't seem to be intuitive, and what it takes to get to that tipping point. It is, for me, and I should say a little bit about my background as well, it is a great pleasure to be involved in this project, because I think all of us tend to learn so much. We have this opportunity to learn so much about some of these key fundamentals, about not only what is basic about learning to learn, but how to teach for learning, how to teaching how to learn, which is our real overarching focus. So I just should say Stella's had 3 stellar careers in 3 continents already, and it is indeed a great pleasure to work with her. The other elements of this project in terms of work in Germany and in the United States just again bring a bigger brains trust to some of the challenges that we might all face in terms of how the projects will run and how we can interpret what we're finding. I should also note that my involvement comes in part on the back of a project that we've already run at the Melbourne Graduate School of Education in conjunction with the Department of Education and Training there. And that project was realising Australia's potential. That was certainly an ambitious title, and it was led by Professor Patrick Griffin, and it focused on how teachers can better support high capacity learners in their classrooms. And one of the key elements of that was through instruction and task design that focused on empowering these learners through self-regulated learning. So as part of that project, we developed modules on self-regulated learning that was shared with some hundreds of teachers in Victoria. And we also developed beginning prototypes of assessments about classroom practices that do promote self-regulated learning, and that's one of the elements that we've brought together in this larger design. And it's going to be the opportunity to validate that instrument with some observations that really is a contribution of this work as well, because usually such measures are done through self-report, and while that is an important way of gathering some data, to be able to triangulate that with actual observations, and then a discussion afterwards when things seem to be discrepant, really is a learning opportunity. So you can see I'm excited about it. I hope I haven't been too loud in the end because of the possibilities that this project does present. I'd also like to link it in my last comments to some other work that I'm doing. So my role at the Melbourne Graduate School of Education is as Professor of Learning Intervention. So my specific interest throughout my career has been those children, those students, those young people with learning difficulties. And I know from throughout my work, which began in the late 80s, looking at what a difference some sort of awareness of one's own thinking about strategies can make to students with learning difficulties. It was this sort of research that was started in that time span, and that has continued on, but in a sense never taken as much hold as it could as part of teachers' instruction. So my interest in what can actually boost the performance of those kids with learning difficulties leads me to deeply believe that more awareness of learning strategies, and particularly one's metacognitive ways of managing one's learning, is so important for all learners, but particularly for those kids who might be struggling at all. So I wanted to note that in my current role and my work. And one piece of research that I'm doing at the moment actually is in Ecuador. And it's about the fostering of inclusive education in Latin America in that particular context. And one of the things that we are doing with the teachers in Ecuador to, in very resource-poor contexts, help them improve their capability so that learning becomes for all, using teaching that matters, is to bring this dimension of self-regulated learning into their instruction. And we do it through asking those teachers to focus on learning, not labels. And we particularly ask them to think about all of their students as active learners, how they think, how they relate to others, how they use the symbol systems, literacy and numeracy, that's so fundamental to all learning, and then how they manage themselves. So we use this acronym of ATRIUM to bring together the key elements that we're looking at in an inclusive education framework. So you can see that there are many connections through this project, and I think we will really endeavour to bring them together powerfully for any participants. So thank you for this opportunity to talk a little bit and make some connections with this work. And are there any questions that you'd like to ask after my comments? We were saying 8s and 9s.
You're right.
That's what our discussions were.
But this is not...
It's not a... Yeah.
We're going to be talking about strategies for teachers to deal with younger students.
Yes, that's right. So, you know, when you're looking at the design, you're certainly focusing on what you want to do, but then you have to, and you're very well advised to take note of what you can do and how you can best make a project still meet the direction of its aims, but also work to be flexible as it needs to be.
Is the, if you could just, oh, and this too.
Yeah.
Wow, we're wired. Okay. All right. Jayne and I are going to we'll make this conversational if you like, but Stella asked us if we would talk briefly about the benefits of working in partnership with the university and, you know, some of the outcomes. So this is what you're going to see as some parts of a presentation that the 3 schools that were involved in the Beliefs About Learning project with Flinders University, with Stella and Mike Lawson. So this presentation it shows you, you know, it tells a bit of the story for each school. And we put this together for the South Australian Secondary Principals Associations, not specifically for this purpose, so I'll jump around a bit. We won't take you through the whole thing. It is Friday afternoon after all. But so one of the things, the processes that we engaged in were essentially around practitioner inquiry, and some people understand that to be quite flimsy, quite loose, but we believe that it is actually a rigorous and planned process, or a systematic process, and it does have the potential to have impact at all levels. So I'm just going to whiz you through some of those. And you know, there's so much value in building capacity of teachers to inquire into their own practice. It's really motivational, and you know the inquiry questions that were developed were sort of so engaging that they sustained the group through, you know, some of those busy times, and you know, when there were sort of some challenges in thinking and so on. And also, as you can see, it's you know, we support the views of Darling Hammond about it's an approach that understands educators as people who learn from teaching, rather than you've graduated and that's the end of it. You're an expert teacher for the rest of your life. Okay, so as well as that, we did spend some time thinking about these protocols. They would be very familiar to the Reynella East staff. We talk about these each time we gather, and we unpack elements of them. But really, the inquiry process requires you to come into it with the intention of learning something new. And quite often in schools, there's a tendency to, and elsewhere, there's a tendency to come with the solution in mind. And so, you know, we spent some time with the groups talking about that, putting it up front that there's no point in setting an inquiry question if you think you already have the answer. If you think you have the answer, go and have a go at it. You know, there's nothing wrong with that either. Okay, and that we come with the intention of being, you know, highly collegial. So it took us a little while to get the group to relax and open up and challenge some thinking, and particularly if they didn't agree with the processes or the approaches or the directions of the group and so on. So I would really encourage groups to spend some time on that. If you don't, what happens is you get halfway through the process and the wheels start falling off because there are tensions around those things. So we thought that was really important. Also understanding the dimensions of inquiry. We spent a bit of time on this. So you can see in that first column that as teachers and educators, sometimes things aren't going well. And we go home and we puzzle over it, we reflect on it, and the next day we make a change. So that's the rapid repair. What we're talking about here is not necessarily, it can lead to formal research. If you get involved in this, you will be part of some formal research, but as a practitioner inquirer, you're reflecting on action and inaction, and you're going to spend some time thinking about what is the problem, the question, the concern, or the dilemma. And that, again, is why this process is so engaging, because it's about you and what's happening in your classroom, and it's highly collaborative. So there, that's a summary of that. Moving past step one is always what people want to do immediately, and they want to jump from before they're really clear about what's the problem, identifying the issue or the problem or the dilemma or the concern, and getting, you know, right down here somewhere. Mind you, these are interchangeable steps. Before clarifying the question and checking out what the data says, what the evidence is for that, and so on. There's a real tendency to do that. So, you know, with the groups, understanding this process is really important before you jump into things, and along the way as well. And that all of those processes are to and fro. Okay, so I'm going to Victor Harbour. We're not going to go through theirs, but it was basically about self-efficacy and about students when things got tough, when it got tough, they were just giving up easily, and so there was a focus on that. So I'm going to now move through to find. There's Stella's work. That was an important part of it. The end, right? Before I jump over to Jayne, and now that's a bit awkward, isn't it? Because then I'm going to come back at the end. But I just wanted to say a couple of other things. I just want to concur with the benefits of developing communities of practice and inquiry with and beyond the school. huge benefits from that. And we saw our groups learning from each other each time we came back together. Now I noticed that there are 10 opportunities for this group. I think we had about 8. But 10 opportunities for you to go away, to engage in the process and to come back and to share the progress, the challenges, the questions, to engage in some new learning. So each time we had some input, the opportunity to stop and do some professional reading. So we did that together too, because in the busyness of everyday school life, quite often we don't stop to have a read, to go a bit deeper with things. So Stella and Mike led us through some of those processes. We had some, I guess our group was a bit challenged sometimes because they had some reading to do, and then they had a task, they had to come back and share their understanding of it. So, you know, once you haven't been in academic life for a while, there is a discipline in getting back into that, you know, so that was really helpful. I think also that quite often in what we do in schools, we tend to identify problems of practice quite easily, and people will have great ideas about what they think should happen, but we miss out that step, which is, what does research tell us about this? We'll go to that step, which is, what is the practice of others and what can we learn, but not about what's been going on in the world of research. So I think that step was really, really beneficial for our group. And, you know, the potential, because it's collaborative in its nature and transformative in its intent. I think that the learning and the outcomes for everyone involved were really, really significant. And certainly in my school, I got a sense that when people went back, others were really, really interested in what they were doing. They presented to each other, and it started to grow momentum. I'm not sure whether that's how the people from my school heard about it, but next year we are offering, 2 of us are offering a similar process, one for a primary group, one for a secondary group, and it's hands up and people want to get involved because it's about them and, you know, how they want to improve their practice. It's not something that's mandated, you know, you will do it this way. So I think that's really important. And because it contributes to the growth in knowledge and skills and understanding of teachers, I think that's the same point, just said a different way. It is about facilitating opportunities for teachers as educators and inquiry researchers. So I will let Jayne have the microphones now, and we'll tell a bit of the story of what they came up with.
Oh, okay.
I think, no?
It won't last long. Actually, I wondered whether or not it might be worth just stopping right now and talking about what we're thinking might be in it for you, from your perspective. Like, why would you want to be involved in this program, and what do we think that might mean you are committing to, and give you the chance to kind of think that through a little bit. And then we can maybe have a little bit more of a talk about the logistics beside that. So would that be helpful, rather than hearing about what? Yep. I've got a couple of nods. Okay. Okay, so the experience that Caroline, Amanda and I had as leaders in our schools in the program that Caroline was just speaking about was very much one of being able to allow time and support our teachers to really engage with research and to think about how they might be able to transfer that into their practice. Because it's all very well to sit down and read all those books and all the research and check out some of the, you know, the blogs, etc. But what does that actually mean for us as teachers in our classrooms? And how do we as leaders enable our teachers to actually really give it a go? And give it a go when it may not even work out, but certainly then it might actually make a difference for our students in our schools. So having people like Stella and Mike in this program at the ready to answer our questions, but also to ask us questions, really probing, challenging our thinking and our ideas, was invaluable. As leaders in schools, we can't do that because we're not in close connection with the research. Obviously you heard from Lorraine about how Stella is actually leading internationally around this research. So I know in some of the surveys, particularly at Victor Harbour, you really challenged people about what they were looking for and the process they were using in their actual interrogation of that data. The data that actually told them something that on the surface they weren't aware of, and when they dug a bit deeper into it, actually really was significant in terms of the teachers designing their learning in such a way that it really did increase the self-efficacy of students involved in that program. Now that's invaluable. We really don't get much of an opportunity in schools to really make those close connections. So that was speaking of. However, as Caroline's mentioned, actually as a leader in a school, what was really important for us to do was to work alongside our teachers and really work on that inquiry process. So rather than just listening to what Stella had to say or Mike had to say, how do we actually then in our school contextualise that? And the inquiry process was absolutely critical. It had to be about our own question in our own school, about our practice in relation to, will I say this horrible word, acronym, SIP, our School Improvement Plan, or our 3-year development plan, or our strategic directions. It had to be about that. Otherwise, all we were doing was doubling up the work of our teachers. We were actually just adding to their workload. So we wanted to really deeply embed it within the priorities of our own schools. And with recent work in our schools, since we started this program, that have really pushed us in the area of literacy, numeracy and pedagogy through our site improvement plans. Non-government school people here today, please excuse me referring to our context. But we see that there's a real opportunity with a STEM lens to really dig deeply into what is it that we can do to help our students self-regulate their learning in relation to STEM. And obviously we're going to be focusing in on literacy and numeracy as part of that process. It's a no-brainer, really. So it will be seen by our teachers and certainly by leaders within our schools as being something that is actually on our agenda anyway. But as leaders, it's really important for us to make sure that that is the case. Hence Stella saying right at the very beginning, it's pretty important that you in your schools have leadership support for involvement in this program. It's not about one teacher doing it, it's actually about a small group, maybe 2, if it's a primary schools may not be able to afford more than 2, but certainly that it fits within those priorities that have been set by the school. So what we made sure we were able to structure, the 3 of us, Amanda O'Shea, Caroline and myself, alongside Mike and Stella, was a program that enabled them to connect with the research. So we're proposing, and we're working with Stella on this, with our first meeting today, a professional learning program that might be something like a series of a core component to the program that might be a day, a term, for example, where you have the chance to come along with your team, listen to some of the research, engage with the research, much in the way that Caroline was describing, do the reading, work through the readings, think about what that means really in reality for practice, and then in the latter part of the day or another part of the day is actually to think about what that means for the inquiry that you're undertaking in your school. Look at maybe some of the data that you're collecting, planning to collect, or some of the data that you bring to the table through your processes in your schools already, and have some time to sit around that table and really interrogate that. So we had in mind that this might be the core professional learning program. 1 day a term, we were thinking, is probably what you could afford to commit to. But then with the option of having an extension. And that extension might be to work closely with Lorraine or Sean or Stella, or maybe with someone from the other schools that are involved in the program, or perhaps with some of the resources that are made available through the online platform. Sounds to me like there's going to be some amazing resources that are coming from the Northern Hemisphere that I've not even heard of. It's so super excited to be able to interrogate around the ACAP, for example, and self-regulated learning. Have a chance to do that as part of an extension that would be supported in this professional learning program. But if you can't commit to that, if it's not something that your school is able to manage, then it's not part of the core piece. It's actually something that you take to the next step. So Caroline mentioned potentially 10 days. It could be potentially 10 days. But what we're saying is 4 across the year would be the minimum if you're going to get anything out of that, and we're going to be able to support the research that Stella is undertaking here. So, how does that sound? So, does that sound like that's something that you might be able to manage? One day rather than 10?
That wrong. I just read that in Stella's message. Have I got that completely wrong?
No, you haven't got it completely wrong, because this morning we met and we went, oh, I don't think we can do 10.
When we had the proposal, it's 10, but we understand that, well, we didn't actually have 10 days. We had 10 face-to-face sessions.
Right.
And we were thinking of having half days.
That's
And
right.
after talking with Jayne and
Carla and Amanda, yep.
we realized that it might be difficult for schools. It might be easier to have a day off and have a full day rather than have half a day here and half a day there. But this is something that really we could construct. This is open for discussion. So if the school is interested in participating, then we can get a leader for the team, and then we can discuss how it is to be done. But a minimum of 4, if we're going to be doing full days, we would like a minimum of 4 days, 1 per term.
And can I just recommend that some representatives here don't have leaders here, so but what I found absolutely critical was that I met with the team in between our planned sessions, because otherwise there's a tendency for time passes by and there's been no action in between. So I met at least once and sometimes twice. And we spent a lot of time in our group just getting the question right. And ours was around how does co-construction develop self-efficacy and improve outcomes. And we had to do a lot of work around what was our shared understanding of co-construction, for example. So there's a lot of work to get to the next meeting, a lot of wrestling with ideas. It was really enjoyable, and, you know, we just all benefited so much. But I suggest that you need that as well. Don't know how you found that.
Yeah, it's actually part of our program in our school, our professional learning program. We support our staff to engage in practitioner inquiries. So when that session came along, that's what a small group of teachers were working on. Lockie, you were part of that group. So it wasn't something that you were expected to do outside. It was something that was supported within, like across the whole school, because we're all working on practitioner inquiry. And then when the reports were made at the end of the year, everyone in the school got to hear about it. It wasn't just something that was kept with just that small group. So having that time back in school is important. And the co-design piece that Stella was talking about, I think, is very much around co-design at a school site, but it's also the co-design between us as a network. So if there's something that's popping up, for example, on those core days that looks like being value-add sort of extras, then we could be designing that and making that available to those people that are interested. And the 10 sessions could be, in part, accessing those resources that are prepared and available through that on-site program, the on-site resource. So not getting it wrong, but we moved a little bit on from that idea. So it's probably a good time to really throw you in, Lockie.
I mean, just concur with that, I guess, having the time, it is about having those discussions about the question, getting the question right, but also you have a bit of work to do in the middle, don't you? So you need to collect your data, you need to analyse the data before you come back to the session. And so we did have time built into our learning program, which is definitely important to have that checkpoint. But I found it a very beneficial project to work within a team at my school, but then also see how another site is taking a different question, but yeah, taking that and investigating it in their own context.
So I've had some comments about, you know, initially the groups were quiet, but they became more collegial and willing to.
Yeah, and I think
Challenge,
part of that was how it was, how the program was constructed. So we did have to interact with individuals. So rather than all just being around the table in a roundtable discussion, there were times where you had to go away and talk to one other person from another school and discuss how we're going and discuss a reading or whatever it was. I'm just trying to remember what it was exactly. But yeah, getting to know people helped with that a lot as well.
But there'll be some differences between the project that we had last year and what we are planning for next year. Because we're planning to have more focus on student engagement and self-regulated learning through the two frameworks that I described. So there will be, and also another important difference is that the face-to-face meetings will be based on video observations of actual teachers teaching. So we have created a small video bank from videos from the TEAMS study and also from other studies. We're also collecting videos from here, but we're not going to show, we prefer to show unknown teachers teaching in their classroom. And we will be trying to, we have prepared transcriptions of the videos and scoring sheets so that we will be able to look at the video, look very closely at what the teacher is doing and what the teacher is saying in the classroom, what the students are doing, and try to understand it through the lenses of self-regulated learning, through the lenses of cognitive engagement. How do the students, the teacher's actions and her talk or his talk influence what students are doing, and how does this relate to learning? So we're going to be doing a lot of that, and we think.
So you're saying, Stella, that back at the school we do the work around, you know, developing the inquiry question in relation to the topic.
Well, you'll be free to develop your inquiry project, but hopefully some of this information, because whatever the inquiry project is going to be, it should be around cognitive engagement and self-regulated learning and agency. So we hope that the information we'll be providing will give you, more, information. And also, what is important is to really see in great detail and analyze teachers' talk and teachers' action. So we're going into real instruction and what is being done minute by minute in order to be able to have an understanding of what is happening and how what the teacher is saying and what the teacher is doing has an impact on what the students are doing and what the students are learning. So we want to understand these links and be able to reflect on instruction, using the videos. Now, the way you're going to use this information for your own projects is up to you. Maybe you want to focus on student engagement. Maybe, it's up to you to select a project, an inquiry project that is related to this, but use it the way you think it's more useful for your instruction and in the context of your school. Okay, so we'll be providing information, we'll be analyzing the videos, then you can take that information, the videos, or add, maybe you have found some information that you find it's very important and it supplements what we're telling you. So we would, love and be open to having input from you, and then you can take it and see what is useful for you and for your school. Does this answer the question?
Yeah, I was just wondering whether it would be beneficial to provide some preliminary reading and information about self-regulated learning so that we could go back and we could talk about open box and understand what might our questions be around that for our practice.
We have created modules for ICAP and modules for self-regulated learning. There are two modules. One describes more theoretical aspects,
and the other is application in the classroom. We have a video bank that we have transcribed, and we're in the process of scoring, but we don't want you to see the scoring. We want you to figure out the scoring so that you learn from that. So we will be putting this all online. Some of it is already there, some of it will be added. So if you think you're interested in the project, it would be nice if you can let us know before the end of the term, because that would help us plan. Because once the new year starts, everybody's very busy at the beginning of the term, and it would be nice to have someone representing the school. As we said before, we would prefer to work with schools rather than with individual teachers, and have more than one teacher from a school, at least two, because we think that during the time between our face-to-face meetings, the teachers can collaborate to discuss their projects, or they can have joint projects, and learn from each other, or watch some videos together, or watch their own instruction, videotapes they take of their own instruction and try to analyze it. So we think that a lot of learning can happen, because we only can have so many face-to-face meetings, and your time is so precious. A lot of the learning can happen through your collaboration in your school with other teachers.
I think what we would need is for people to let you know by the end of week 8. So that in week 9 you might be able to at least identify a time in term 1, so that you've got that in your calendars. Otherwise you come back next term and it's already full. So I'm using school weeks, week 8.
Yeah.
Is that the beginning of
Yeah,
December?
I'm starting to get used to it. At the beginning,
What was that?
Jayne would say week so, and I would say what?
Oh, 6, yeah.
Are there any resources available for schools that are releasing groups of teachers?
We have money to pay for teachers, TRTs.
Right, fantastic. Principals will want to know that. Because it will be $1,500 a day for my little team here.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far our budget will
So
go,
even a contribution.
but there will be a contribution to that.
That was a good question to ask.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking about budget and the timeline of week 8, and it's all very well for us to put our hands up, and then we go back and there's no budget set up.
Yeah.
So that makes it easy? Week
Yeah,
8?
actually, yeah, it would be nice to commit now. Yeah. Would you like to say something about the schools you're coming from, and if you think that such a project would be useful? Jason, we met, and I know you two are from Blackwood.
Yeah,
Would
Blackwood
you?
High School. Look, definitely. It's something that I wanted to try and bring to the school. I think the opportunity to engage across sites. We've only just started branching out, doing collaborative moderation. The teachers, it'd be fantastic to really supplement their learning with some resources from this sort of project. I've already made notes of things that I want to do. Now I've just got to convince them that that's what they want to do too. We'll see how we go with that. But I think the opportunity just to work across sites and broaden the perspectives of the staff would be really good. So I'm keen to try and get a few on board. But it is always that balance of how do you weave the narrative so that they believe it's part of the core business and not more. And therefore there's a lot more buy-in to the process when the work involved.
I think you only have to do it once, and then it takes care of itself,
So I'm from a small college. I'm stepping in a new role next year, looking at STEM coaching and that, so working with teachers and that. So this is very much sort of up, like I guess my hit for next year. But just trying to also think about where this project will probably best fit. Is it in science and maths core teaching model? Is it in our STEM classes? Sort of in the middle school as well. So I'm just trying to find a nice balance there, and also what teachers will I involve as well, because we've got 6 teachers in a core teacher model for science and maths as well, and if we're looking at 3 or 4 teachers, yeah, so just balancing that out as well. So there are a few things, but yeah, I mean, definitely, yeah, good interest for us. Yeah.
Yeah, as Jayne, I think, said, the emphasis is on teaching how to learn, but it is on STEM classes.
Yeah.
Most of the videos we're going to have will be either in math, science, or STEM.
Yeah.
And we are going to spend at least one session to talk about strategy specifically for science or for STEM or for math, I mean, that are more science content-oriented.
Yeah. And really, we're also looking at doing integration, more integration between maths and science as well with different teaching. So that ties in really well to that side of things as well.
Yeah. And I've asked Jayne if she can give us some of the science and maths teachers sometimes to talk about projects that you have found and strategies that you use at ASMS that you have found useful in your school.
Yeah. There'll be some amongst the group too. So.
Yeah. And also what I want to say is that when we did the project last year with Reynella East and Victor Harbour and ASMS, some of the teachers, I remember some of the projects at Reynella East that were fantastic. I mean, this is where the co-construction comes, because we are researchers, we are university teachers, and you are the teachers, you really know, your subject, and we also learn from you. And, we would like you to give the opportunity to take what we have to give you, but then come up with your own projects. And sometimes we are surprised at the ingenuity and innovation and, how interesting your projects are. So I'm sure there is a lot of, a lot of room there for your, for developing your own initiatives and doing something that is relevant and important for you and for your school. Would you like to say something?
Me?
Yep.
I'm excited. So this is my first year out as a teacher, so I've got a year behind me now. And I think that being involved in this program is just going to benefit me immensely and just give me lots of new knowledge, especially being, I guess, a younger teacher in the maths and science field. It'll be good to just get a bit more knowledge behind me about how I can better engage those students that do disengage quite early, because I do teach year 8s and 9s, so yeah.
What school are you coming from?
I'm at Reynella East College.
Reynella.
Yeah.
It's interesting
It's got
stuff.
senior secondary load too, so it's a good balance.
You've got to have a good balance.
Yeah. What about you, Rena?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
No, I was interested when you said about learn from teaching. That was actually quite striking.
Okay, how about you in the back?
Okay, we're from Seymour College and I'm the head of STEM there. Our middle school ranges from year 6 through to 9, and within that time frame we have 2 super subjects. So we have STEM, but we also have Gen, which is the English equivalent of STEM. So this project for us, I guess, would be an opportunity for teachers to re-engage back with the research, which often, as a new teacher, you come out of the research, but quite often as you've been in there for a long time, there isn't time in a school setting, unless you're lucky enough to be at ASMS, to actually have time to re-engage with the research. So I see this project as an opportunity for both our old and our young teachers to re-engage with what's actually been studied internationally and bring that into our classrooms. I think what we do in our setting is quite good, but it can always be improved. Students can always be much more engaged. We certainly have a lot of our girls who are super engaged, but we also have a fair share of girls who need that extra support in their classrooms as well. So,
I know the house from beautiful downtown Springbank Secondary College, which is emerged from a redesign of Pasadena High School.
with a STEAM focus. So we have a strong arts program and have been working together with Flinders and ASNS to create a STEAM focus through interdisciplinary inquiry. We also have at the moment sites as disability unit and mainstream together to create a really inclusive. So there's a whole lot of work for us around pedagogy, around learning, and particularly around the self-regulated learning. So it looks like a great opportunity for really timely opportunity for us to actually engage through practitioner inquiry, not just what we're sort of hoping will happen.
Okay.
I'm Belinda Clark. I'm from Sturt Street Community School, so I'm primary. We're a small school, so this year we've got 8 classes, next year we go to 7. So there's limitations with the amount of people that can be involved. I've got a principal that's very active, and we've been really pushing, we call it STEAM, because we add the arts in there as well. I've been teaching too many years, but I can always see that I can always improve my teaching skills. I also, our whole school and our cluster that we're in, we've really been pushing accelerated students. We've got targeted 6 accelerated students in every class. I can see this really assisting them as well. And I know my principal will be very much behind it. It's just a matter of we can get staff involved as well.
Well, even if you can get two teachers, I mean, it would be, and it's okay to be a primary school. And you are also from a primary school.
I'm from East Melbourne Primary School. We are a little bit bigger. We've got 27 classes next year. We have a fantastic STEM coordinator who is very, very passionate about STEM and self-regulated learning, in particular student agency. She's moving away and I'm taking her. I've got her position next year, which will be exciting. I think, I guess the challenges, even at a bigger school, is going to be finding people who are willing to take on what they will see as possibly additional work. I'm really keen, but I think I'd have to go back and see if I can find some other people who would like to join. Yeah.
I'm also from a primary school. I'm from Marion Primary School, so just down the road. Similar to Belinda, we've got quite a small school. We've got 8 classes going to 9 next year, so that's exciting for us. Again, our constraints will be around how many teachers, because obviously funding is an issue for us. But I was a part of a 3-year project. I've been in Catholic Ed until this year with Monash University and UniSA around STEM, and my involvement in that was fantastic to see the growth in the students. So seeing this come through, I was very much really excited to hopefully engage in it. I know primary is not kind of where you're targeting, but seeing what the results I got from the project that I was involved in, I can really see what you've been talking about today and where we're going as a primary school, and our focus would really, really benefit our students.
Yeah, I certainly think what we're focusing on in terms of cognitive engagement, student engagement, and self-regulated learning can apply to school, primary school, especially a couple of last years of primary school where science is becoming more important. And I consider actually primary school terribly important because that's when you want the students to be interested and to uptake science later on and continue. Because if you have them not being interested early on, then it's much harder to persuade them when they're in middle school or senior school. So there's a huge role that your primary school plays in creating this interest and this engagement in science.